Do you think that you and your partner could sell everything, pack up just a backpack each on your back, and have your dog and move to another country? Well, that's exactly what my next guest did. And if you want to hear what happened and how it turned out for them, keep listening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sally Peterson. I am the founder of a boutique consulting firm called Global Citizen Life, where we help 5 and 6 figure entrepreneurs diversify their life, reduce their taxes to zero or single digits, move to a country where they like, help them get residency, citizenships, diversify their assets, and open up bank accounts so they're never under the control of one single government. You can follow us here, so click subscribe, or on our website at globalcitizenlife.com. But enough about that. Let's find out what happened with our next guest. Joining us. And Cliff, thank you very much for your time and joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I hope I can be of service to you and the listeners.
Great, thanks. So, Cliff, let's start with telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you kind of started, a little bit of your journey, why you chose to pick the destination that you're in, what that destination is, and how everything kind of came about for you, for your experience.
Absolutely. So my experience began back in about 2011. I was living in Portland, Oregon with my partner. I was working as a bartender. I had been a bartender for a very long time, and I just decided I wanted to do something different. So fast forward 4 years later, I graduated from Portland State University with my degree in world languages, Spanish, and Latin American cultural studies. And I had already made my mind up at that point that I wanted to be living in Latin America, and I wanted to put my degree to use on the ground. So
Excellent.
my partner and I had decided on Puerto Rico as it was part of the United States, an easy transition. And we were originally going to settle there. However, Hurricane Maria wiped out the island, and we went with our second destination, Mexico. And we moved from Portland, Oregon with 2 backpacks and a chihuahua, and settled in Cozumel, Quintana Roo, which is an island off the coast of Playa del Carmen in the Yucatan Peninsula.
2 backpacks? That's it?
That's it. We sold everything else. Everything else that
Wow.
we owned. We had a major yard sale or estate sale, and whatever was left was up for grabs. We kind of were looking at making a clean start
Hmm.
anyway. And we kind of just decided we weighed the pros and cons of bringing everything that we had with us, which wasn't very much. We're two young people living in an apartment in downtown Portland. So really didn't want to have much burden once we arrived. So
Hmm.
we took as little as possible, literally the essentials, and of course our dog.
Right. And you're right. I mean, when you have to think about moving expenses, if there's going to be any type of import taxes or duties, and most times relocating, it's not if you already have residency and things like that. But then at the same point, it's just that time and how long is it going to take? And I'm sure for the most part, it's easier to sell everything. You can buy everything there. It's not like you're not able to get it. So it definitely
That's
makes it
kind of
easy.
that's kind of what we had come to the decision that it was going to be far easier to acquire things once we were in Mexico than it was going to be to try and figure out how to get them down there and at a
Right.
price point that we could afford.
Right. Right. And so you went to Mexico, and did you already start the process for a temporary residency when you were in the United States, or did you get to Mexico and then start that process?
We did not. So we did arrive in Mexico without residency or
Mhm.
permission to work. Um, like many at that time, this would have been in the year 2016. Mexico really wasn't as tough as they were on immigration at this point as they are at this point in time. So we
Mhm.
went down there like a lot of folks, just thinking I might be able to pick up a part-time bartending gig, and we would teach English as a means of surviving on our own.
Mhm.
However, that dream came shattering down really quickly as you realize that Mexico, it's very tough to find a job in Mexico without a work permit. And a
Mhm.
work permit is extremely hard to secure.
So what did you do?
Good question. So we
Because you're already there, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Because you're already there,
no,
and I'm assuming even then you were there kind of on a tourist visa, so you had 90 days to kind of figure things out before you'd have
exactly
to
right.
leave again. Hmm.
That's exactly right. So we had a 6 month visa at that point in time. And we had a house that we had rented sight unseen from the United States, which is a mistake. Always see your property before you rent it. That's another good
Always,
piece of advice.
yeah, yeah.
People love a fish island. So the house turned out to be very small and very different than we had imagined it, and it was advertised on the internet. So buyer
Oh,
renter beware.
renter beware. Yeah, lesson
Well,
learned.
anyway, lesson learned. So we happened to see an ad for a school that was hiring for English teachers, a very good institution on the island, had a great reputation. And I applied first and
Mhm.
got the job, which came with the work permit. So we were sponsored for the work permit through the language academy in which we were teaching English. Shortly after I was hired, my partner Joshua was hired, and we both had work visas by the end of the first year.
Oh, excellent.
Mhm.
Great. Great. And so a few kind of bumps in the road, but nothing, nothing catastrophic, which was
A
good.
whole lot of luck and a whole lot of networking, honestly. It
Hmm.
was not as easy as it seems. Problem being is a lot of people think I have this skill set. I'm going to be able to find a job, no problem, that will sponsor a visa. But to be able to sponsor a visa for a foreigner is a big expense and a big liability for most small businesses.
Right.
So finding some place that's actually going to support your visa rather than just try and pay you under the table is incredibly difficult
And
and
I'm
becoming more and more so.
yes, and I'm sure now it's even harder then, and a lot, which is understandable that you need to be able to do a job that one of the local people can't do
That's
because
exactly correct. You have to bring a skill to the table that's not taking a job away from a Mexican native.
mhm,
Like Mexicans can wait tables, they can be bartenders, they can, but one skill we do have as Americans, Canadians, and people from England, Ireland, Scotland, obviously, is the
mhm,
ability to speak native English.
right.
So this is one thing that surely does not pay a lot. You will be living on a Mexican living wage,
Mhm.
but you will be working legally if you can find a reputable business to support your work visa.
Right, right. And so you were doing that, and how long did you stay with the school? Are you still there? What's going
I
on now?
we
Because it's
stayed
been a
we
few
stayed with
years.
this. Yeah, it's been a few years. So I believe we stayed with the school for about 2.5 years. And then we had decided, I really wanted to be teaching Spanish. Spanish was my passion. So we decided at this point in time to start our own business as a small Spanish school on the island of Cozumel. So I went to see lawyers in Playa del Carmen, and myself, my partner, and another American who was a co-worker of ours at the time started our own LLC, Amistad Spanish School, and we began to form a small side company, which we were able to support our visas as owners of a Mexican LLC. So therefore, the
Okay.
residency visas were transferred from the English school that we didn't own, in which we taught, underneath our own business, which we do own as a Mexican LLC. That
Hmm.
process is quite intense and quite interesting. A lot of times people think that you have got to have a Mexican citizen if you're just a temporary resident to start your own business or LLC. That's simply not true. You have to
Okay.
have at least 3 temporary foreign residents to be able to form an LLC without a Mexican being part of it. Because there are, unfortunately, a lot of people out there who prey upon Americans and Canadians who want to start their own businesses
Mm,
legally, but don't have the necessary requirements to do so. Many Mexican born citizens are happy to jump in and help.
right. And that help probably comes at quite a cost.
It does, and sometimes you can even lose your business because as Mexican citizens, they have more rights towards the company than you do. You just don't realize it. And a lot of the time, if you don't speak Spanish, you can get swept away in the midst of miscommunication.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
that's just an easy one. Even if it's not somebody outright trying to be deceitful, if they said, well, this is what I said, but there is that miscommunication, that definitely can be a problem.
There certainly is. And if I have one number one tip of advice, obviously, I own a Spanish school, is start learning Spanish before you make your decision to move. Because a lot of people, they feel like once I'm immersed in it, I'll pick it up just like that
It
and I'll
doesn't
be
work that
fluent.
way
And
though.
it only works that way for children, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah.
As adults, it's not quite that easy. So get on it, use whatever apps you can. We're
Hmm.
always here. We have online classes available in the USA, Canada, or Mexico. We even have some students over in Europe. So
Oh,
yeah,
great. And so, how did you come up with the idea or the thought of starting a Spanish school in Mexico? Like, is there a very large expat community and you kind of saw the need for one because the expats just weren't learning Spanish or didn't really have a great way to?
exactly. So that was the current condition on the island. There were a few small schools that did teach Spanish, but they were nobody with actual certified instructors. These are just native speakers. And
Mm.
anyone knows that just because you speak a language doesn't mean that you can teach it.
No, teaching is completely different. And
Yeah,
a lot of times when you teach, you realize, because I do tutor some English online sometimes, and you really realize how a lot of English speakers don't speak properly. And it happens in every language. I've talked to Spanish
100%.
people. They're like, oh, when I started learning English, I realized my Spanish was so terrible. And it's because in a way we kind of become lazy. We know what we mean,
Mhm.
people know what we mean, and we don't use the exact format, shall we say, of a
Exactly. We don't
sentence
speak
structure.
grammatically correct in our own languages, let alone
Right.
in Mexican Spanish.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So to answer the question, yes, Cozumel at the time had one of the largest retirement communities in Quintana Roo. So we had what you could refer to as a gringo bubble. There's a certain area in which the gringos will stick to, Americans and Canadians, people north of the border. Gringo is not a derogatory term in Mexican Spanish. It just refers to somebody who's not from Mexico and who's from north of the border. But you get this sense that the community is mixing, but not mixing. You
Right.
can, clear lines are drawn, you know,
Mhm.
and it was just obvious for me that there was a need for somebody who could straddle both sides of the fences and fill in the gaps, because just because somebody's speaking Spanish at you during a class for an hour doesn't mean that you're going to understand the nuances between the two
Mhm.
languages. And I felt like myself, having been an English speaker and got my degree in Spanish, I had to overcome all of these hurdles that I know English speakers struggle with because I had to do it myself.
Right.
So I felt like that I had a certain skill to offer that most other people teaching Spanish at the time did not. And that's basically how I gathered a following. And I started with a one room office in the back of a hallway with not even a single window.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And
Uh,
then a year and a half, right before the pandemic, we had one Spanish school and 3 English schools on the island. So we grew quite quickly. Our reputation was flawless. However, Mother Nature had plans for a worldwide epidemic. We decided to close, we had to close all 4 of the schools.
Right.
But luckily, most of our United States United States citizens and Canadian citizens still had resources to rely on and decided to make the transition to online classes, making really the pandemic both a blessing in disguise at the same time, because we were able to expand our reach online, which we had never thought about doing prior.
Right. So that's what I call those silver linings, when we find
Exactly.
some good things that happen in bad situations.
Exactly. And moving to Mexico, you're going to have a lot of those moments.
Right. And so how do you feel now? Because it's been years since you were there, and you've kind of seen that a bit of divide, but sort of together with the Mexican citizens and the expats who are either temporary, permanent, or getting citizenship. With that learning Spanish, do you find they're more integrating more, and there's being more of a, I guess, an integration, or do you still see that there's still a fair separation?
Clearly there's still a fair separation because we have so much tourism that in the center, it's very hard to practice your Spanish because most people want to practice their English with you. So you get what we call a choque. It's like a push where they want to practice just as much as you want to practice. So I always recommend to anyone wanting to learn Spanish in any touristic area in Mexico, you got to get out of that downtown area, just a few blocks up and a few blocks over, and you will encounter people that don't speak English, as most of the tourist workers do.
Right.
And that's where you get your real practice in. But we have had so many successful students. Some of them come as visitors, some of them live full-time on the island. I've had students that I've had for 3.5, 4 years that are excellent Spanish speakers and thriving on the island, completely integrated. And then you have people who just don't want to put any effort in. And you have to respect both, I suppose, but we'd like them all to join us.
Of course, of course. And everybody has their own desire, and some people just want to chill out, be in a better climate, especially Canada. Let's be honest. I'm from Canada, and winter sucks.
You get it.
I left. Winter sucks.
Yeah.
I hate it. Like, I don't know why anybody's there for the winter. And I get that people have to be, and some people enjoy it. Some people, people like the winter. It's just not my thing. And
I agree. I'm wholeheartedly.
Yeah. It's just not fun for me. And so what would you say to somebody who's maybe kind of on the fence? They're thinking about moving abroad, could be specifically for Mexico, or maybe even somewhere else like Costa Rica, something like that. And they hear sometimes their friends and family, and it's always these negative things like they shouldn't do it. And then on the opposite side is all the magazines, news articles, and blogs that it's like, oh, everything is rainbows and butterflies and amazing. And we know it's not the extreme of either. Like it is a bit of a combination.
Exactly.
So if they're kind of on the fence.
If they're kind of on the fence, I would ask yourself this: are you an interest person at heart? If you are not, making a big life move is going to be extremely tough. Are you set in your certain ways? Are you able to adapt and adjust easily? And if the answer is a strong no on any of these, you might find your experience very tough and very hard to deal with. Because one thing, there are several cultural nuances throughout Latin America, like punctuality and efficiency and things that we're used to as Americans and Canadians that just aren't the same throughout Latin America. And I think a lot of people come in with rose-colored glasses, but there is a need for research. Do as much research as you can. Look at both sides of the fence. Like you said, if you're on it, you need to know what's on both sides. Stay away from a lot of those Facebook expat groups. You can be attacked for answering a simple question, it's much better to do your own research on your own. There's a lot of great websites out there for moving to Mexico. I don't have any that I like to that I would plug right off the top of my head. But when I was moving, I did all my own research and I tried to form all my own opinions. But we can't plan everything and we
Right.
never know what's going to happen. But be prepared. It is an adventure and things are not going to go rose colored and smoothly throughout the entire transition. And
Mhm.
that's even if you speak the language fluently, which the majority of people who choose to move to Latin America do not. Yeah.
Right. It's true because as you said too, with some of those things to do your research and to be reading several websites, if that's what you follow, or several
Mhm.
magazines, because everybody's experience is going to be different and everybody's opinion of something that was, oh, it was brutal, it was a nightmare, it was so hard. Somebody else might be like, yeah, there were some challenges, but it took some time, we pushed through. And even though it could have been the exact same thing, their response to it is different as well.
Yeah. If you're a very uptight, not very flexible, and you're tend to be like a very type A personality, like Mexico may not be the best place for you because we tend to be, as Americans and Canadians, quite impatient because we are used to punctuality and efficiency.
Mhm.
So I think this is the main thing I hear from the majority of my students who make the move, that this is their biggest struggle beyond not being able to speak the language, obviously, is the fact that punctuality and efficiency are severely lacking in Mexican culture and in Latin
Mhm.
American culture in general.
Right.
So this is
It's
something to always keep in mind.
And it's funny in a way because part of the reason why people leave, whether it's North America, the UK, Australia, and they relocate, lots of them say, oh, it's so busy, it's so hectic, I want a slower pace. I like it when I've been here for a week on holidays. It's like
Sure.
living is not the same as being a week on holidays. And for that week, you do love doing nothing and you don't care if it takes a while, but you're not dealing with day-to-day stuff. And eventually it's like, okay, but then after a while it gets frustrating because you're still so used to that your whole life, however many years of punctuality, on time,
Exactly.
everything. And it just doesn't stop in one day of moving.
No, it certainly doesn't. And it takes a strong person to adapt.
Mhm.
And I think aside from doing your research, go and rent a place in your desired location for 6 months and then go back home and then make your decision. Don't, which is basically what we did. We rented a place sight unseen for 6 months. We returned to the
But
United
don't do
States. We
that. But
decide
just don't do the sight unseen part.
don't
Yeah, just
don't do
don't do the
that. Yeah,
sight
that
unseen.
don't
But
do that. Trust
you
me, don't
know.
do that. But that falls under do your research, and I
Right,
clearly
right.
dropped the bomb there. Take a moment to realize anything that's advertised to you in dollars in English, there's a reason that's being done. That's because that's specifically targeted at expats and
Hmm.
people who clearly don't speak Spanish and don't know the rental market. And
Right.
they know that they're willing to pay these sorts of prices. One of the worst things you can do is go onto a rental group and just shout out your budget.
Facebook, I need a place for this much. Can I find anything? You'll
That is like one of the worst things you can absolutely do because you will absolutely find something
at
at
exactly that
that
price.
price. Yes. Do your research, dig around. If you have any friends on the ground, like that is
Mhm.
always a huge resource to reach out to. If you already know somebody like who's living down there, they can connect you with people that are in his or her circle, their circle. These are all helpful points, I would say, but
Even I think
definitely don't make any split decisions.
right, even if somebody doesn't know anybody, a situation where you're still going to probably end up paying a little bit more is to search for some reputable agencies that
Absolutely.
you can at least get there if it's going to be a long term, as you said, 3 months, 6 months or something, to check it out. At a minimal, find a reputable agency so at least the place that you're getting is going to be in an area, and they'll have photos of what it's going to be like, because then you'll know.
Exactly.
You pay a little bit more
There are,
still, but there's that there's that security of
It's
it.
worth it. It's worth
Mhm.
it. Honestly, if you do not speak Spanish, especially find
Right.
yourself a real estate agent, because there are a lot of scams out there that look very, very legit.
Mhm.
And you wouldn't have any idea, they'll have pictures of the whole property,
Mhm.
videos sometimes even, and then
Mhm.
you end up sending your monthly deposit from abroad, and you never hear from this person again.
That's right. Yeah, sometimes they just vanish. And just so everybody knows, it's not just Mexico, it's everywhere.
Oh
Because when
yeah,
I was
it's
looking in Barcelona, because I had moved to Spain, and at first I was looking online, and I was looking and looking, then I thought, wow, some of these are really nice. And at this price. And I was like, that's a bit of a red flag. And I messaged though, I messaged, I'm interested in this. And I got an email back. And of course, oh, you have to hurry because it's so busy. It's going to be gone tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. Send your money.
you
And
do,
I'm
you feel
like,
pressure.
yeah. And I'm like, well, if it's gone tomorrow, it's not meant to be. Great on whoever got the deal then. And I had messaged a couple people and I got the exact same email message response back. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
a
So
scam.
they're smarter than you think they look, and
Mm-hmm.
they're really good at drawing your attention in. So
Yeah.
I would agree with you. Get a reputable real estate agent. There are plenty in all of the expat communities around Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and most of them, if not all of them, are bilingual or have an assistant who is, if you're worried about the language barrier. But if you're doing it on your own, or even with the whole family, that sense of security is worth
Yes.
the little extra money.
Definitely. Definitely. And that little extra actually could save you a lot in the long
A
run.
lo-
So it may not
yes,
even end up being a little extra. So,
exactly. And like I said, rent for 6 months before you decide to buy. If you've been going to that location, for 3 months, a year, for 20 years, then
you know
maybe
it.
just go ahead. Then maybe I go ahead and buy. But if
Yeah.
you went once or twice, you really liked it, you're considering it for retirement, or you want to go down there and live and maybe teach English or work as a digital nomad. These are all
Mhm.
things to take into consideration, because as you know, the digital nomad movement is huge right now.
It's massive everywhere in the world. Like the number of people who are relocating, and I mean like relocating from North America, the UK, New Zealand, and Australia out of those countries is just, and there's as many from other countries that are wanting to go to those countries. It is a massive, massive shift of people because now with so many that have the ability to work from quote home
Exactly. We
without
have
the home being
normalized
where.
the virtual workplace during the pandemic. So
Mhm,
it has freed up a lot of people to be able to travel and to work and to
mhm.
um you know stay in Mexico. But you got to remember, Mexico is cracking down on residency benefits anymore, so they're not just throwing you that 180 visa like they used to do.
And I
They're
think
getting
a
pretty
lot of
serious.
countries are doing that. But and there's still there's many that just say, if you can prove so much income and that you've had it, absolutely, we'll give you temporary residency. Or,
Yes, Mexico does as well.
and they just want that proof. So there's they're cracking down in a way that they want to make sure that they know who's there and they're legally allowed to be there. But in a lot of cases, it's just some paperwork,
Yeah.
and waiting, patience. Have to
Oh,
have
of course,
patience.
patience and paperwork. You couldn't have said it better. Patience and paperwork.
If you
That's
don't have
exactly
those,
what it
you're
is.
not going anywhere.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, and Mexico at one point in time had as many illegal immigrants, Americans and Canadians, as we had in the United
That's
States from Mexico.
right.
So there, you got to remember, these are people that are owning property, running businesses, but not contributing to the tax system.
Right. And that's what
So
the government wants to prevent.
exactly.
They just want their tax dollars.
Yeah. The Mexican government wants us here. They say, come on down,
Come spend your
but
money.
they want you to do it the right way.
That's
And
right.
you should do it the right way, because if you do it the right way from the start, you don't have any worries. And
Exactly.
if you look at plane tickets lately, it's not exactly cheap to be flying back and forth every few months.
Right now, it is ridiculous ridiculously expensive to fly anywhere. I have a flight coming up next week, and I'm paying triple what I normally would pay. Like, it's insane. It's incredible. But hopefully, I mean, hopefully that gets better. But it's also, why do you want to worry? Why do you always want to have that little kind of thing in the back of your head that's like, ooh,
Yeah.
I hope I don't get caught, or ooh, I'm doing this wrong, or
Yeah.
this is a little sketchy. I'm
Guess what?
staying
Green
over my
cards are
time.
cool.
Like, yeah, and then it's no worries. I can come and go as I want. Sure, I have to have some paperwork, some patience, but I get it done. And then I just don't even have to worry. I can come and go as much as I want. I can work. I can, do
And in
whatever that's
Mexico,
legally allowed.
you don't need a lawyer. It's a common misconception that you need a lawyer to file for temporary residency. You absolutely don't. You do need a Spanish speaker, because
Hmm.
if you can't navigate the paperwork, which is not easy to do, you're going to feel very, very frustrated throughout the process. Mexico is
Right.
very picky. You put the wrong date, or or do the wrong color ink, and they won't accept the form. Like, you have to do it again. You used a capital letter when it should have been a small letter. So, like, I would definitely recommend somebody going through the process of temporary residency or permanent residency for the first time. Have at least an immigration consultant to help you,
Hmm.
and shop around. Don't just go with the first person. There are people out there that are in this game, and they charge a lot of money to, like, secure your residency, which is actually a process that doesn't require a lawyer at all. It just requires you knowing how to fill out the paperwork in Spanish.
Right.
So,
And the right paperwork. So that's
yeah,
always good. But yeah, as you said, either somebody who's been through it, a consultant, or somebody that you completely trust that speaks Spanish, if you've got a good friend there, or a colleague,
exactly.
if you're, as you've done, if you were opening a business, if there was a few of them together, that's definitely a good thing. Otherwise, be prepared to have it be a longer process
Yeah,
because you're going to
yes,
make
not
mistakes.
exactly. And you will be at immigration daily. Like, the first time I redid mine, I think I was there 6 different times in one week, because you know requirements change, of course,
Of
as you get
course.
everything ready. There's always one
Oh,
last
but
thing
you
you
need
didn't
this
do, or
paper,
yeah,
this
exactly.
stamp,
So
this
so
something.
you walk in those doors just with the idea that you're gonna need to come back. And then when
Right.
they finally say you don't, you're like, woo,
Woo.
I did
Yes, I
it.
did it.
If you do, that being said, if you do have the money to hire a lawyer, it does streamline the process, and it
Mhm.
takes a lot of the stress out of it. So I'm not saying don't hire a lawyer by any means. In certain folks' cases, it's actually necessary. Like, if you own assets already in Mexico and all that, I would definitely say hire a lawyer to deal with your immigration. But
Mhm.
if you're able and you can speak Spanish, or you have someone close to you that speaks Spanish, you can do it on your own. It's just
Mhm.
quite a frustrating process.
Right. Yeah. So it just, everybody has their own, whether they're at, as a lot of people say, they either have the knowledge, have the time, or have the money. It's going to be kind of usually one or two of those three things that it
I,
takes to get it
that's a
done.
great way of putting it, Sally. I couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, great. Let's see. So, Cliff, if anybody of our listeners want to get in touch with you, they decide, we're going to Mexico or another Spanish speaking country, and they think, I need to get on learning some Spanish. And whether they
Yeah.
want to start online, or, as I said, if they're going to be in Mexico and they want to come to your school, where can they reach you or find you?
Absolutely. So our main school is located in downtown Cozumel, Mexico, which is in Quintana Roo, off the coast of Playa del Carmen. Um, we offer online classes in USA, Canada, and we do make exceptions for European countries as well, as long as we can accommodate them on the time schedule. So basically worldwide, but the majority of our clients are from the United States or Canada. And you can reach us via Facebook at Amistad Spanish School. That's Amistad, Amistad Spanish School. We also have a website at www.amistadspanishschool.com.mx. And we have an Instagram presence as well. So basically, if you want to reach out to us, you can just hit in the Google search bar Amistad Spanish School Mexico, and we should come right up.
And
You'll be able to have access to the website and all of our social media networks.
great. And we'll also put links in the show notes to make it even easier for people, so they can just go through and just click on it and get directed right to where you're at.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you guys join us and experience Mexico like never before.
Excellent. That's great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Cliff. We really appreciate it. And some great points that you made for people to know and think about. So thank you again very much.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy that I was able to contribute something, and I'm excited to hear what the response is.
Excellent. Well, I'll definitely let you know.
Okie dokie, Sally. We'll